Hey everyone, welcome back to Integrative Psychonautics. I hope you're doing well out there. And in today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys about an important internal skill, an important way of relating to our own thoughts and emotions that I commonly see missing among people, especially people who, really want help, who really need to kind of level up or change or heal, who are maybe struggling with mental health issues. There is a common thing missing that I want to start to tune you into because it's super, super important that you do this. And a lot of people aren't doing it. It makes all the difference. So let's talk about it. Okay, so what am I talking about here? What is this missing thing? Well, there's a core internal skill that a lot of people either aren't very good at, never think to do, or never learned how to do that really makes all the fucking difference in your world. And it just blows my mind that more people don't do this. And it's this. It's learning how to not take all the thoughts that pass through your mind literally or personally. Okay? Let me say that again. Learn how to not take all your own thoughts that pass through your head personally. Learn how not to take all the thoughts that pass through your head literally. This is so important. This is so key. And this actually gets kind of serious because when I hear about situations where people get really far gone in terms of mental illness, and I'm not talking about necessarily things where there's kind of like a biological genetic disorder happening. But when you hear about people who, end up doing horrendous things either to themselves or to other people, acts of violence, and you start, learning about, what was going on for them, they inevitably will share some sort of weird, twisted kind of core belief that they've ended up with that they took literally because it was happening inside their own minds. But here's the thing. Here's what I want you to really get. We take in ideas from the time we are babies through our entire lives, especially now online with social media and media in general being a huge part of everyone's, daily life. We take in ideas constantly that are not our own ideas, that did not originate with us, that probably we would have never conceived of had we not been exposed to them through others. And this has always been true. And, we call this social conditioning. And it's true. There's all kinds of different forms of social conditioning from, your parents and your kind of local culture where you grew up, your friends condition you, your, peers at school condition you, your teachers condition you, your books, your media, video games, all of that, obviously, but also just in general, the sets of ideas, the schools of thought, there's so many layers of ideas out there constantly conditioning us that do get internalized and do get taken in. Pardon me, my neighbor's dogs are going nuts right now. Do get taken in and can be, in there and be kind of programmed into our unconscious mind, and we don't realize it. This happens all the time. Advertising is an awesome, great example of that. For example, I'm sure we could start playing the game where I start listing off different, jingles and songs from commercials, and you even though you haven't heard that particular song or jingle or commercial in maybe years or decades, you could remember it as soon as I started whistling the tune, right? So these things get in there and they're embedded in there, but we didn't create them. We didn't choose them. We don't necessarily identify with them, but they are in there, okay? So I want you to understand, first and foremost, we have information coming in that isn't ours all the time. Now, when we're talking about psychedelics and the psychedelic brain, the opposite is also true. We have thoughts that float through our nervous system, that float through our mind, that also aren't really our core deepest truth all the time, right? Now, sometimes when we're on psychedelics, we will have some sort of half-baked emotional piece of logic coming from maybe a younger part of us or a conditioned part of us, or a part of us that's in pain, or a part of us that has a certain bias, or a part of us that has taken in modeling from somebody else in our life who is maybe a toxic person or unhealthy. And we'll have these weird pieces of toxic thoughts that flow through our attention, right? We'll have maybe a moment of emotional reasoning, a rationalization that kind of pops up, and it feels a little true, even though it may not be the entire truth of your whole being and your whole system, right? But when we're sensitive, because we're on psychedelics, we might notice these more and start and really hold on to them and identify with them or take them seriously because they are happening in our own head, in our own brain, in our own nervous system. There's such an important key skill here, which is learning how to quality control your own thinking by applying discernment, critical thinking, rational, logical challenges to some of the ideas that float through your head. This is so important. This will keep you sane. This will keep you from doing dumb shit a lot. And if you don't have this in place, you are more likely to get pulled in all kinds of different directions based on your mood and your emotions and which part of your personality is speaking through you. You're more likely to act impulsively on bad ideas, right? So this idea of this concept, rather, of learning to look at the thoughts that float through our head and that float through our being and our mind and just emerge, and we all have them, and they can be dark and they can be gross, and just look at it and go, is that really true? Is that really what I want to believe? Is that coming from my highest truth, from my deepest core? Is that my entire truth? Is that just a part of me speaking? Which part of me is that coming from? Is that coming from my healthy self, from my higher self, or from a wounded part of me, right? It's so important to make these distinctions. And this is really, if I'm going to be brutally honest, one of the places, where meditation comes in so handy, and where I see so many of the clients and the people that I talk to don't meditate. And it's kind of not a surprise to me that if you're not meditating and you're not really good at critical thinking or challenging ideas and questioning them, that you're going to start to take whatever floats through your head personally or literally or seriously because it apparently came from you, or so it seems, right? But what if these thoughts were programmed into you, or partially programmed into you, or kind of implicitly derived from a wounding experience you had, right? And so it's wounded logic. This becomes hyper important with psychedelics because psychedelics will amplify all of that, right? It'll amplify the felt sense of the wounding. It'll amplify learning. It'll amplify insights. It'll amplify rationalizations and cognitive distortions as well. And, this is why, during the kind of post-care phase, that when I'm working with people and when we're doing integration work, discernment is such a key part of it, because sometimes we get these weird, things that float through our head that seem or feel true in the moment, but it doesn't mean that's useful or healthy or accurate. Okay. So I would encourage you, I kind of diverged, but I would encourage you to start to develop this skill inside of yourself of really noticing and questioning and challenging and not identifying with every thought that floats through you. Okay. I was going to say about meditation. One of the ways meditation is super, super useful, even if you never hit a bliss state. And, people always think mistakenly that meditation is about switching off your mind and making your mind silent. It isn't necessarily. What it's really useful for is when you sit down and you, aren't trying to think about something, you're not actively thinking, and you sit and you try to be quiet, you're going to notice that your mind automatically chatters. It just starts chattering away about whatever, with all kinds of weird ideas and bullshit and rationalizations and half-truths, and you really get a sense, holy shit, there's just an autopilot, auto chatter thing going on inside of me. And a lot of what's saying isn't great. And I'm not trying to do this. I'm not trying to think. I'm not trying to make it happen. It's just going. And this really starts to hammer this point home, that there is an aspect of our brain that's kind of just narrating, that's autopilot chattering, that can say all kinds of fucked up toxic things that has nothing to do with your core self, your true you, your true essence, isn't necessarily healthy, is largely based on conditioning, and generally isn't, wise to take seriously or listen to or identify with or built-in identity around. When people don't learn this skill, again, it can be disastrous. And so I just want to put this message out there, because I know I see a lot of people, and even, again, in my sessions, I don't really do CBT work with people, but this is kind of the argument for CBT and that kind of work, is that if we don't know how to recognize flaws in our own thinking and challenge them and question them and put them in the right place, and be willing to hold some of our emotional conclusions very loosely. Like, oh, sure, I feel that way. That's there. Part of me believes this, but not fully identify with it. If we don't have that skill in place, it can lead us down a really dark, dangerous, bad path. So I just want to kind of put that out there. This is an important part of, I think, generally healing and personal development and leveling up and, moving past your limiting beliefs and growing as a human being, but also, especially once we added psychedelics into the mix, which can amplify and distort thoughts in all kinds of different ways and make things feel very true, even if they aren't, this becomes doubly important. So I really want to kind of put this message out there to you guys, that concurrent with your skill of getting comfortable with psychedelics and working with them and addressing trauma and getting in touch with your emotions and getting more embodied and accessing your spiritual self and all that wonderful stuff, concurrent with that, you need the skill of quality controlling your own thinking. Right? This is so important. And again, this is a massive missing piece. Most people don't do it. Most people believe all the thoughts that float through their head. And then most people don't even stop to censor themselves, and they just spat it out, whether it's online or with other people, even if it's toxic. A lot of people take action on the thoughts that move through their head, whether or not it's a good idea, because it's my truth, right? So just start to develop this. Start to look, start to notice, start to challenge, start to question, start to go, is that true? Do I want to agree with this? Do I believe this? What else might be true? What are alternatives to this perspective? There's a lot of different ways, and I can do videos about cognitive work and, how I think about all that and different tools that are really useful. But I just want to kind of generally get the idea out there for you guys to start to notice this, track it in yourselves, and start to put it in its right place. So much love to you all. Take care, stay safe, be well, and I have more content for you soon.